So in this video I'm going to talk about a recent lesson. I literally just gave a golf lesson to a golfer who doesn't get loads of time to play and practice, and when he does he's kind of inconsistent with either hitting the ground early or hooking it to the left as a right-handed golfer. And what I wanted to do is help him very quickly so that he can get some immediate results when he next goes and plays and practice and start building more confidence, and I wanted to share it with you. Now, to paint a bit of a picture, this golfer was somebody who has a tendency to get too tilted, so they lean back and the arms would bend too much in this hitting area. So this meant that the kind of club face would be kind of pulled around to the left and would be more prone to hitting the ground early or not hitting the ground at all. So we wanted to change that, and I wanted to change that. And what we did is I asked him to make some practice swings, and he really struggled just to hit the ground, and there was no real change in that. So the first thing that I said to him is, look, rule one with golf is we need to make sure that that club from parallel down to parallel through, so the bottom part of this swing, we need to feel like that club head is staying as low to the ground as possible. Okay? That means more like so and like so. So that kind of got him thinking a little bit. Now, what I also did is I changed his setup a little bit. Okay, so instead of this posture where it was pretty conventional, I mean, he had a slightly strong grip, which meant he got a little bit more sort of tilted this way, like so. So what I did is I said, right, what we're going to do, you're going to flare this foot out. You're going to open up your hips a little bit. So your belt buckle's going to move a little bit down and towards that lead foot just to start off with. And that's just going to bring your upper body a little bit more over. And then we just made some practice swings from this new setup. So less like so, more like so, where we just sort of did some halfways and some halfway swings. Now, you can see if I do this slowly now, because this setup position is kind of encouraging me to rotate and stay a little bit more downward, you can see the way that I can keep that club head lower to the ground. See where I am? Whilst if I'm like this, see how quickly that club head is lifted. And this was the problem that the golfer was facing. So by changing the posture and by changing the narrative and thinking about keeping that club as low to the ground, it started to produce some really good results. And that's why I think it will help lots of you. Because the idea of keeping the club low to the ground, it influences your body to figure out a different way to move. But what it also does is it stabilizes the club face. Because what you can start to do is that if your body is turning and you're opening up your body more like so, the hands are more likely to be further forward. Because my golfer was more this way, the club face was more closed. And this is one of the things that I just want to talk about very briefly, because I have mentioned this before in videos, but sometimes golfers lose sight of this. Shaft lean, okay, which means hands ahead, a lot of that is a byproduct of how open your body is. So if I take hold of the club lead hand only here, and let's say I close my shoulders, okay, so like so, can you see what happens to my wrist position? Because my shoulder moves further forward, my hands move further back, and the wrist looks like this. Now if I do the opposite and I open up my chest and pelvis, see my shoulder moves this way, so it pushes my hand forward. So sometimes just making these little alterations like I did with this golfer, what we did is I flared his foot. I moved his belt buckle a bit more down. I got him a little bit more over his lead leg to start off with. We kept the swing nice and short. And all of a sudden, because the body orientation was so much better, we were able to strike the ground each and every time. And because the body was that little bit more open when we were hitting it, based on this idea of keeping the club low to the ground, all of a sudden we started to introduce some shaft lean. And what you can imagine is quite quickly we'd eliminated the left shot because the club face is square, if not more open, and we're getting much better contact each and every time. So we just took it a stage further. We just started to go with the idea that this golfer doesn't have loads of time to play and practice. So I wanted him to have quite a holistic approach. I said, well, look, you know, because there was lots of questions about ball position and what should I do with this shot, what should I do with this shot. I said, look, all you want to do, just keep the ball pretty much in step of that lead ankle. Get yourself set up where you go a little down and open. And then from there, as long as you sort of swing back and you can move through similar to what I'm demonstrating, you are going to produce more than enough distance to be able to play the golf consistently. But what you are going to do is you're going to keep that contact and keep the club face under control. So you're going to increase your chances of having good shots all of the time. And that was what was starting to happen. And that's why I wanted to share it with you. Now, the great thing is, like I say, you can keep this technique for the shorter and the longer clubs, which I want to run through with you as well. The reason why I wanted to run through particularly the driver as well is because previous couple of lessons that I've had, I've gone too much down the extreme of tilt. So what they were doing is they got themselves set up, they moved the ball further forward, which was correct, but they'd got this excessive tilt with the shoulders, which then lent itself to swinging too flat and on the inside. And what that also does is it lends itself to sort of standing up. So that's the same problem. When you have a tendency to move this way, you'll also lose your hip depth in the backswing position, and obviously the results were really inconsistent. So although, particularly to my new golfer, it felt quite peculiar being in this sort of, more neutral position. What I'm also saying to you guys is this is fine, okay, from this position. From here, you can pick the club up. If you want to swing it short, you can. If you're not, you want to turn, you can reintroduce your tilt then, and then still bring it down and through as you go in towards this hitting zone. And you are still going to get great results with the driver, because you've got to be careful, okay, with this sort of idea of hitting up on the ball, what it really means. Hitting up on the ball basically means move the ball a little bit further forward, okay, and then from there, you can still have pretty much the same mechanics and still get some really decent results with the driver. Down to wedges. Now, if you're going to do a little chip shot, makes sense to have a little narrow stance, that's absolutely fine. But if we're talking wedges and pitch shots, I would say having this width of stance and having that ball position there, and again getting that pelvis into that leg, upper body over the ball, again this is just increasing those chances of keeping that club low to the ground as I'm demonstrating here, which is going to lend itself to crisp, compressed golf shots. But also, you can see it avoids any confusion. This golfer doesn't need to set up saying, right, my ball needs to be here, I need to do this and this. It's like, no, look, that little white golf ball only cares about your ability to get the club to strike down on it each and every time. And the thing that's going to help you do that is your body angles. So the message behind this video is hopefully one of real interest for lots of you. And what I really wanted to portray in this message is, if you don't have loads of time to practice, maybe the easier way is to sort of do a very holistic skill for all. If that's not you, and you don't want to change all of those little setup characteristics, that's fine. I'm not saying it's the only way to do it, but what is important is understanding that if you are somebody who is struggling with your contact, then it might be worth just experimenting with changing your setup so your pelvis is a little bit more down and open, so your lower body is a little bit open relative to the target. You can still keep your shoulders relatively square, but what that does is it reduces any excessive tilt. And what it also does, as I saw with the golfer in mind, is starting a little bit this way also meant that it gave him the liberty to sort of move this way in the downswing, which did lend to much better results. I truly hope this video helps. You guys can let me know, and I'll see you soon.